Hello, everyone. Welcome to Food Biz Plus from the Food Business School. I'm Will Rosenzweig, the Dean of the Food Business School at the Culinary Institute of America. Delighted today to be having one of the really outstanding innovators in food with us today, Neil Grimmer, who is the former CEO of Plum Organics, and now the founder and CEO of a new company called Habit, which is one of the really exciting new businesses in the realm of personalized health and nutrition and well-being. And just a little background on the Food Business School. The Food Business School is the Center for Graduate and Executive Education at the Culinary Institute of America, which is one of the nation's, if not the world's, leading colleges focused on culinary arts and sciences. We have 4 campuses in Hyde Park, New York, and San Antonio, Texas, and 2 locations in California, one in St. Helena and one in downtown Napa at Copia, where the Food Business School is based. This is our monthly session of conversations with remarkable entrepreneurs and innovators. And we are planning to speak with, actually, we have 2 sessions this month due to some scheduling issues, but tomorrow live, if you're so inclined, we have Steve Case, the founder of AOL and now the principal behind Revolution Growth, which is an investment firm that has moved into food. And I think it'll be really interesting to talk to Steve about his new book, The Third Wave, and also get a sense from an investor on what they're seeing as the outlook and possibilities for food. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Neil Grimmer, a friend, colleague, someone who I have a great deal of respect for. Neil is really a remarkable leader. He's a leader of teams. He's a leader of our industry, and I've really enjoyed watching his career and vision manifest in the world. So let's welcome Neil Grimmer to Food Biz Plus. Are you there, Neil?
Yeah, hey Will, how are you?
Okay, I can hear you. Maybe Lisa can bring in Neil's picture up. Are
All
you
right,
in
let's see.
sharing mode,
Got
Neil? There we are. Great.
it.
Perfect.
Here we go.
There we
Hey
are.
Will, how are you?
We did it. We did it.
I know.
We're a little rain soaked today. It's for those of you that aren't in California, we're having our rainiest week or two since I think 2007, and we can't complain. But
A little
we
soaked
are a
here, a
little,
little drenched.
we are a
Yeah.
little, we are me too. We both have our
Our flat
glasses
hair,
ready to
it's
be
looking good. I know,
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for
So
having me, and thank you for that warm introduction. It's very kind of you. I mean, obviously, coming from a luminary in the industry, those warm words mean a lot to me. So thanks for
oh,
having me
thank
on.
you. Yeah. So Neil, just to get started, I know some of our audience would be really interested in learning about your own path and, you know, maybe think about answering this question, are you born an entrepreneur or do you learn how to become an entrepreneur or is it genetic? What is it? How do you become an entrepreneur?
It's interesting. I think I wouldn't label myself an entrepreneur because, when I look back at my history and my past, I was a musician, an artist, then a designer, and then ultimately turned into an entrepreneur and a CEO. And I think that the common thread between all of that is I love to create things, whether it's, music, a piece of work, a piece of art that, speaks to somebody or a business that actually helps change people's lives. And I think it starts from the same place, uses a very similar methodology for me. It starts from, either I have something to say or, a need I want to, fulfill or a problem I want to fix. And that sets me on a creative path. And, it's been interesting for me. I have an undergraduate in fine art, a graduate degree from Stanford in product design. I spent, 5 years playing, in punk rock, bars, basements, and barns, even before any of that. And I think that's actually helped me be a better entrepreneur at the end of the day because I'm drawing from all of those experiences, to take on, some of the bigger problems that we're trying to tackle today, which is people's, health and all centered around nutrition.
And tell us about, that transition from artist, then you became a member of the design firm IDEO,
That's right.
right? Where you were kind of working on helping other people solve their problems.
Yeah.
What did you learn there that kind of prepared you then to jump into the driver's seat and lead a company?
Well, at IDEO, there's a methodology called human-centered design, and I learned that, when I was at Stanford Product Design. But even before that, when I was an artist, the kind of work that I was making was as much futuristic products as they were, pieces of art. So I'll give you an example. So I had one piece was what I called a wireless hug, where it was a vest, it was a couture vest, and you gave yourself a hug, and it would take a snapshot. There was a computer in the back of it. It'd take a snapshot of your heartbeat, pressure, and your body temperature, and it would send it wirelessly over a hacked pager network to another vest, and my heartbeat would tap out on your chest, and it would warm in the areas of a hug. And so, in one respect, that was trying to explore what the intersection of, human emotion and technology was. And this is back in the mid '90s. The answer today is probably like Facebook, right? But back then, we were hacking with all these different, these ideas. But someone at Stanford Product Design saw one of my shows in a gallery in San Francisco, and they're like, "Oh, this guy's doing like futuristic product design." So he invited me to come down to Stanford and check out what they were doing. And when I went there, I had this epiphany that, they were, quite frankly, using the same materials and tools, but they were solving problems in people's lives. And I was contemplating, these futures with these gadgets. And I was just totally enamored, and I jumped in and had one final show at the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. And then I jumped headlong into product design, which led me to IDEO.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And give us an example of the types of things you might have done at IDEO and take us toward your intersection with the food world.
Well, what's really interesting is I first went into the studio called Studio M, and ironically enough, it was medical devices and McDonald's. Those were the two businesses that Studio M had, so it was appropriately named. And my first project that I was working on was trying to develop a quick connect tool for coronary bypass at the distal end. So, here I am, an artist turned product designer, thrown into the operating arena, where I'm watching surgeons do open heart surgery on a sheep. And in that process, we were looking at the tools they were using, in some ways, almost the brutality of what surgery is. I always, in my mind's eye, think of it as a very precise process, and it really isn't. It's a very physical process. And we were trying to see how we could make that a simpler process. And we ended up designing a quick connect tool where you could literally graft the vein onto this device and literally with one pull of a trigger, snap it into the distal end of the artery. So it was pretty cool. My second project was actually a McDonald's project, helping design the first touchscreen ordering system for McDonald's. So, open heart surgery, McDonald's, and everything in between. So it was a pretty wild experience. But one of the beautiful things about IDEO as a designer there is you get exposed to this really vast array of problems. And what you come out with is a skill set that allows you to approach problems that don't have an obvious answer to them through a creative process that actually helps you kind of get to the right answer through a methodology. As I said, it's called human-centered design.
While you were doing it, there was a whole lot happening in the natural and organic food space, and I remember very vividly the once going to the expo in Anaheim, and I met a woman that had a little company called Plum, and
Yeah,
she was making frozen baby food.
that's
And I
right.
thought, oh, that's really interesting. But I was scratching my head knowing how difficult, number one, the frozen aisle is to penetrate, and two, getting frozen food sampled and tasted in the store is full of
That's right.
complexity. So I was thinking through all of these kind of challenges and
Yeah,
didn't, while I thought that organic baby food was going to possibly be a good, a growing market, I thought that that particular approach to coming to market was, sort of faced really daunting challenges. to
Right.
break
Yeah.
through all of the noise and everything. So,
That's right.
um, how did you find your way into that
Yeah.
situation? And I know you kind of came in after the company was starting to find its way, but
Well,
what was that like?
we had well, and talking about two people that you know and love dearly,
Yeah,
Kirsten and Kristen from Revolution Foods. So when we first started our company, we actually started in partnership with Kirsten and Kristen around taking the Revolution Foods brand and bringing it into retail. And our first foray was to build a healthy kids brand and snack portfolio within the retail distribution channel. Again, trying to tackle a similar problem, like let's help our kids eat healthier, every day, in their lunchbox. And in the process of doing that, I came up with this squeeze pouch applesauce packaging that we'd found in Japan, brought it into the U.S. and pioneered it here, and we started blending fruits and vegetables into these squeeze pouches. And not soon after we started doing that, we saw moms handing it to their babies and feeding them these squeeze pouch baby food. And my co-founder Cheryl and I said, that's the big idea. And Plum 1.0, what you were talking about, was going under. We ended up acquiring the trademark and bringing the spouted pouch with the logo to the market, and it completely revolutionized the category.
I love this story. I had a very parallel experience with Republic of Tea because I had seen these remarkable canisters, these beautiful cylinders with these tight fitting tops and really nice finish when I had gone and visited Japan. I'd worked for a Japanese audio company earlier in my life, and I'd seen this very kind of majestic and elegant presentation
Yeah.
of fine tea that I hadn't seen here. And initially, I went to 6 different can and tin manufacturers in the United States with a sample that I brought back from Japan, and they couldn't replicate it. I don't know if they
Right.
couldn't or they didn't want to because I was just a guy with an idea. But when I
Right.
started the company, I actually had to import those tins from Japan. And at
Yep.
that moment in time, that was 1992, that
Yeah,
was
that
the
was a big deal.
first time. So I just want to kind of underscore this as a strategy for creating
Absolutely.
competitive advantages, going around the world and scouting for um, antecedents or in
Absolutely.
signals of things that you can combine in new ways.
Yeah. Cross pollinate. And I remember when that happened with Republic of Tea, and it was very disruptive. There was nothing like it on the market, and it really broke, in the shelf set of teas. Republic of Tea really stood out. And I think similarly to us, Plum, we always talked about a wedge strategy for sales. So we had this set of 6 pouches, and we spread them into the baby food glass jar set, and they really stuck out. I mean, there was nothing like it. And I remember when we first launched it into Babies R Us, we gave these guys a 6 month exclusive, and at the time, it was kind of an unusual marriage in a way, where an organic brand was coming into a mass retailer like Babies R Us. But we had a mission where we wanted to get the very best food to kids from the very first bite, and we needed to fish where the fish were, right, if you will. And almost every new mom in America has a registry with Babies R Us. And so we struck up a partnership, and they introduced Plum and the spouted pouch to a lot of parents around the country. And I remember going into one of these stores in South San Francisco and seeing the shelf set put in and I saw one parent pick it up and was like, it looks like space food. And she put it down, and I was like, my heart stopped. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is gonna be the end of us. And then I saw, the next mom pick it up, crack it open, and hand it to her infant, and the baby was just feeding itself in the shopping cart. And I was like, that's it.
That's
That
it.
was gonna
You
be
saw it.
that was gonna be the
Yeah.
home run. And the company hockey sticked from there.
It was really remarkable. And again, your distribution strategy was so right on too, because by going into the Babies R Us channel and kind of being the highlighted food in there, people all of a sudden saw you in a new context. And then you moved into the grocery for the natural and organic, and then the
That's
grocery
right.
and mass. And
And
It's
we
interesting.
were, even in that time, we were still working with Whole Foods. They were a great partner from early days, and they still are a phenomenal partner to us. But it was probably unconventional at the time to for a natural brand to really go into that mass specialty in the way we did. And I think, when, for all of those, all folks that'll listen to this conversation, I think thinking about what your core mission is, right? And have that guide the decisions you make as it comes to retailing. I'm a firm believer is, go deep with a few and build really tremendous relationships. And I think we did that with Whole Foods. We did that with, with Babies R Us. We ended up doing that with Target, Safeway, and we never let those folks down, and on the off chance that we weren't delivering enough product to them or whatever it was, we made sure that we really, that they had our attention, full attention. And so, but getting back to the mission part of it, it's really important to say, like, okay, well, what are you out to accomplish as a business? And if it's just selling product, well, it's probably not the natural organic business to be in, because many of us, as you know, and you've lived, we have a mission. There's something that we're out to do to change the world. In our case, feed the very best food to babies at the very first bite, right? So in order to do that, we couldn't say, hey, we can only be with one retailer, for the life of this company. We really needed to be out and available to wherever young parents were looking for healthier food for their kids.
That's a really nice way of describing the overall design of the business. And that having that mission, I find, also helps you overcome obstacles and persist in really difficult situations. Because although Plum is a wonderful success story, and you describe that hockey stick, that's the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
and now it's very interesting to go to Expo. You see dozens of companies with that squeeze pouch offering products. So there was some element of, vision, mission, timing, the stars aligned on the distribution strategy. And then I have to hand it to you. You did such a masterful job kind of orchestrating this team to focus. And, I think one of the things that always fascinates me about you too, Neil, and I just want to point this out, is that a lot of creators are really wonderful at creating new things. And entrepreneurs tend to be, they come alive in that creative stage. But it takes a real focus and discipline, and even a willingness to kind of prune quickly, like what's not working, to actually get the kind of focus and critical mass to make a business successful. So talk a little bit about that. You had the product breakthrough, but then what were some of the challenges to actually create a venture that was so formidable?
I mean, look, you got to start with a great idea. You have to build an amazing team. Plum's success was the success of 80 people that were part of that company to get it to where it was. Every one of those individuals was critically important to our overall success. But I think to your point, there's phases as an entrepreneur you go through. First is the creation phase, which is, okay, what's the big idea, and how is it going to change people's lives? How's it going to be meaningful? Why are they going to want to buy what you have to sell? The second part is bringing that to life in something that people can touch, feel, taste, and that takes a whole other set of skills, which is like prototyping and experimentation, and iteration and that kind of stuff. And then once you have the thing, then it's all about commercialization, which is like, all right, how do I strike up partnerships? How do I find people who have core competencies we don't have? And that, quite frankly, is you're one part salesman, one part business person, one part keeper of the flame of the vision, right? Because you can't let that go. That's another skill set. And then when you're actually running the business, scaling that business, right? Managing with everything from HR to operations and supply chain to continuous product innovation, you need to be able to wear multiple hats, all day long. On a 30 minute to an hour basis, you're switching from one thing to the next. And, and for me, I like I said, I came from a music and art and design background. I had never, actually been in the business of, running a business per se. But when you start to experience the running of the business, you look back and it's like, oh yeah, I produced art shows and I sold pieces in, commercial galleries. I booked a US tour and we played 45 shows in 40 days, and we silk screened shirts and sold them on the street. Like these experiences are actually important moments that actually help you build up to, okay, now I understand there's nuts and bolts that need to be managed here, and you learn it on the job, or at least I did. But those are critically important, and I think I also had an understanding that if I didn't carry it all the way through, this thing may not see the light of day, right? And so, that focus you're talking about, or that commitment, was like really just a commitment and a focus around the idea and the mission, making sure it actually could, like, achieve the goals that it achieved.
The pattern that I hear in your story is really one of having a vision, really having a picture in your mind's eye of what it is you want to create, and then having some kind of self-confidence to
Yeah.
actually want to manifest it. And I always think, my definition of an entrepreneur is usually someone who could never, who's not had enough experience to be hired for the job that they're in. My own experience as an entrepreneur is like, nobody would hire me to do this. I've never done this before, but you
Yeah.
somehow go out and, make it happen.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I always tell my team, like, write the New York Times article headline of the success you want to achieve, and then work back from that, which is
Yeah,
like, well, what's the biggest vision?
that's a
Like,
great visualization exercise.
Plum Organics, changed the way that kids eat 10 years later, da da da, Plum Organics introduces quinoa, kale, and purple carrot to the masses, like, these are the kinds of headlines we were always like, yeah, let's write that one. Okay, let's make that, it's energizing, right? Because I think your point, I think in some ways there's this myth of the entrepreneur that they're like this, they have this all-seeing eye, and they can kind of, it's just sort of this natural gift that they have, and maybe that's true, but I think there are methodologies and processes that you actually can train yourself to have that, that view of the world, right?
Mm.
And one of them is that, like, step back and, for any of the entrepreneurs that are, listening to this right now, step back and ask yourself, 10 years from now, what impact is your business going to have on the world? If you're part of a team, what kind of impact is your function or your role going to have on the success of that company? And that's a visioning exercise, and you don't have to be one of these, celebrated creatives to get there. I think it's almost a discipline that you can build.
So you had this hockey stick experience with Plum, and like
Yeah.
many successful natural and organic companies that start in a niche that then begins to expand, the company was acquired about 4 years ago by Campbell's.
Sure.
And
Yes.
what's interesting about that is that all these big companies sort of concentrate. Um, they've at least in my experience, they have some appreciation now for the mission that adds value to these companies, that
Yep.
translates into customer relationships and brand value. And
That's right.
so I thought it was interesting. I remember last March I ran into you on the floor of the Natural Product Show, and there you were, kind of accompanying the CEO of Campbell's,
Yeah.
Denise Morrison, kind of introducing her to the natural foods world. And to me, that's a sign of what's different now, is that the big
Yeah.
companies actually appreciate the entrepreneurial energy, zeal. They realize that somewhere in the scaling up, if you will, and the consolidation, that they lose that. So the
Totally.
pattern now is to actually leave these companies pretty much alone. They look for obviously supply chain advantages and things, but nobody wants to make the Kashi mistake again, right? Of
Right.
moving a company from
Well,
San
that
Diego
is the classic.
back to
Yeah,
Battle
that's
Creek.
the
And
classic example, which is
so,
Kashi, right?
yeah, so
Um,
talk a little bit about that transition. I think that's a really interesting kind of moment,
yeah,
both for you and
it
the
was
company.
it was both a really exciting time for, the company, but it was also a really scary time. We had always been in the business of taking on big food, right? And now all of a sudden, we're on the eve of actually being part of one of the most iconic food companies in America, right? And with a lot of credit to Andy Warhol and the fact that Campbell's Soup had been around for 145 years at the time. It was one of those things where, even for myself, but true for my team as well, we had to get our head around this idea that, like, well, what is our new role? Because I'm like I said, I'm an old punk rocker. So, I like to take the challenger role and be like, okay, we're gonna overturn this category and this thing, and it forced me to actually step back and look at this as an opportunity to say, what's the bigger idea here? And at the time, and I think it's changing now, but at the time it wasn't a very popular idea, but it was, if you had the right partner at the scale that they're at, with the mission and the innovation that you have, with a brand like Plum, and you could actually find a marriage between those two worlds where there wasn't a loss of values, but rather an amplification of values. There was the ability to scale the business without degrading the quality, right? What happens then? And you go back all the way to that mission statement where you're like, the very best food to little ones from the very first bite. Now all of a sudden, you have an asset and a tool at your disposal to actually get that job done on a much broader scale. And and I remember this back at the time where people were like, well, hey, these guys have different products that they don't have all organic, they're not all this, they have some GMO, they have this kind of stuff, and and I think where the moment of truth happened and why Campbell's was the right partner for us is a story I always love to tell. And kind of rewind the clock. This was 3 or 4 months before we actually sold the company, and I got a call from our investment banker, and he's like, "Hey Neil, I want you to meet the CEO of Campbell's, Denise Morrison, and she's available in 2 days at the Waldorf Astoria for breakfast, 7 a.m. Can you get to New York and meet her?" And I had a hunch this is the kind of meeting you should say yes to, right? Like, yeah, I can get on a plane and meet Denise. And I walked down, 7 a.m. Waldorf Astoria, and it was funny. Denise always says that it was really hard to tell who I was because in our org charts at Plum, we had all our baby pictures, right? And so I still had these dorky glasses back when I was like 2 years old. So she figured out who I was pretty immediately. But we sat down, and the first thing Denise said to me was, "Hey Neil, I get what Plum is all about, and I get what you've built, because I feed my grandkids Plum, and moreover, my grandkids are Plum babies; they're not Gerber babies." And we ended up spending the majority of our breakfast talking about what it means to raise kids in a healthy way, the role that food plays, the impact that continuous innovation can have on getting more of these great products to families around the country. We talked about, how, quite frankly, the way Campbell's set up, it has a long history of acquisitions. Pepperidge Farm is one of them. The goldfish is actually owned by Campbell's Soup, and that company, Pepperidge Farm, still in Connecticut, still doing its own thing. And she talked a lot about wanting to preserve the integrity of the culture that we've built, because she heard about it. She, from some other folks that have been there, that it was electric, that it was vibrant. And she's like, the last thing we want to do is what she said is Campbellize Plum. And so, so needless to say, 3 months later, we ended up selling the company. And it was I think it was largely based on that conversation. I realized that we had an amazing partner in Campbell's Soup. And then the other thing, running long in this answer, but the other thing that's really important, a very cool story, was it was not enough. And we'd heard, we'd seen all the, the roadkill, that had happened with big companies buying natural and organic brands. And we all agreed, Denise, Mark Alexander, the president of the Americas, we said, we're going to do this differently. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that Plum stays Plum, and it stays in California. And so Campbell's committed to build out our headquarters to really give us a proper place that we could do business. Up until that point, we were bootstrapping in the scrappy, warehouse office space kind of thing. And we renovated the entire building that we're now in. It's amazing. It looks and feels like the Plum brand that in the marketplace. And that was really important because I think a lot of our employees are like, what's going to happen to Plum? What's going to happen to me? And we said, look, we're committing with our dollars and our hearts and our minds that we're going to stay here in California. So we did that. That was really important. The second thing we did was we reincorporated as a founding public benefit corporation in the state of Delaware. And so the timing of that was almost uncanny, but Jay Cohen Gilbert, one of the founders of B Labs, and Andrew and Bart, the other founders, amassed a group of us. There was about 10 different brands, and we went to go pitch Delaware lawmakers to create a new classification of business. And so many of you, that are listening in on this, you may have heard of B-Corps or B Lab. These are the guys that actually created new classification of business called a benefit corporation or a public benefit corporation. And we were there pitching lawmakers. And at the time, it was, Method, it was New Leaf Paper, it was Warby Parker, it was Plum, it was Seventh Generation, Dansko. I mean, brands that you know and you love, right? And we were all saying a similar story, which is all of us were incorporated in Delaware. We were all mission driven, and we wanted a new classification so we could stay in Delaware and still do what we did. But we wanted to make sure our mission was written into our bylaws. So up until that point, there was for-profit and non-for-profit, and we said there's a third option, which is for mission or for purpose, and blended, the integrity and the impact of the nonprofit with the sustainability of the profit, right, and the productivity of the profit-based company. And so, as we were going through this process with Campbell's Soup, Jay calls me up and he says, "Hey Neil, it's a go with Delaware. Are you in?" And this is a month before we literally finalized all the deal docs and stuff. And I said, "Jay, you gotta hang tight. Like, I can't tell you what's going on, but hang on. I'll get back to you." And so, of course, we announced the company. And in my day one, I was sitting down with the president of the Americas, and we had our punch list of things, and it was like, all right, how are we going to start to, align communications between the organizations? Where are the areas that, Campbell's can help Plum, and where are the areas, quite frankly, that Plum can actually help Campbell's? And so, we're going through the punch list, but right at the top of my list was becoming a public benefit corporation. And this is one, I actually think this moment was another one of those seminal moments, like that breakfast with Denise. Mark said to me, he's like, "Neil, if Plum was going to do this before you were acquired by Campbell's Soup, then I have to give it really serious consideration." And he said, "I'll be honest with you, I haven't heard of this. This is new to me, but it sounds interesting. It sounds similar to some of the values that we have at Campbell, and we're willing to entertain it." So roll forward 3 weeks later, we had new bylaws written for the company, and we literally became the founding public benefit corporation, getting that seal from Delaware stamped on our new incorporation documents with our friends from New Leaf Paper and Method. And it was groundbreaking, and it was sent a message both to our employees, but also to our consumers to say, we're actually, our actions are going to be translated in not only everyday products you get from us, but also in the charter and the bylaws of our company. So
it's really
anyway,
it's sent a message really throughout the industry, because I think that this relationship between the consumer and the values that the company has brought forward are so critical to the long-term value. And it's also saying that big companies actually want to respect and appreciate entrepreneurial culture for what it was. I mean, back in the day, this was something that wasn't appreciated. So I think
that's right.
This new structure and this new relationship is an innovation in itself. And
that's
one
right.
of the challenges, and in another class that I teach, last week we talked about power and concentration of power in the food industry. And sometimes when economic power and political power fuse so seminally, big companies will just work in their own best interests. And we've seen that with the kind of dilution of organic standards over the years. But I'm sort of heartened by your story with Plum, and I'm heartened, in the relationships that I have with other people that I know at Campbell's, for instance, who have this really great mutual respect and appreciation for this structure. So, I think we should celebrate that.
I totally agree. And it's probably still not a terribly popular idea, right? This idea that small, natural, organic, mission driven can partner with, big food. But, it comes down to people. It comes down to values. And even, the folks at Campbell will say that they are the biggest small food company, right? In the sense that at the end of the day, if you look at all of their peers, they're the small ones out of the bunch. They have an oversized reputation because of Andy Warhol and their legacy and all of that stuff. But what I think the implications of that are is there's a humbleness to Campbell's that said, we're open to actually learning from Plum, and we're equally excited that Plum is going to be open to learning from us, right? And we've had that relationship ever since. So we're 4 years into this. Plum now is the #1 organic baby food brand in the country. By a wide margin. Our 3-year CAGR is larger than all of our competitors, 3-year CAGRs combined. And we're now in 75% of
compounded annual growth.
compounded compounded annual growth rate. That's right. That's a big fact, right? I mean, that is like an incredible stat. And it goes to the credit, quite frankly, to the Plum team. They've done an amazing job. Campbell's has been a great supporter, leaned in where they need to. But our next hurdle rate is to become the number 2 brand altogether. We're 3 right now behind Gerber and Beechnut, and so our next big thing is to be the second largest baby food brand in the country, and so that's what we're going after.
So for about a year, you went underground. I was seeing you kind of regularly, and then you were like, "Hey, I can't talk to you right now. I'm working on something new."
Right.
And all of a
Yep.
sudden, you're like running one company and dreaming up the next. So what's the big
That's right.
idea with Habit, and bring us up to date?
Yeah. Yeah, and Habit was born out of a personal story of my own as well. After well, I'll step back before Plum. I was an Ironman triathlete, so I was doing these long distance Ironman races. I'd be on the course for 12 hours. I wasn't fast, but I had a high propensity for pain. I think that's another characteristic of entrepreneurs. I actually hung up those running shoes to run a different race, which is running a company. And after doing that for 8+ years, selling the company and then continuing to run it after the sale, my wife, in all her infinite wisdom, held a mirror up to me, and she's like, "You've taken care of this company. Now you got to start taking care of yourself." I was 50 pounds heavier than I was when I was racing back in the day, and it was a byproduct of what I call CEO disease, where it was like too much food, too much stress, too much drinking, too much caffeine, to pick it all back up, the next day. Not enough healthy food, not enough working out, not enough meditation and mindfulness, not enough sleep, right? All these things that we know these things, right? And especially those of us in the food industry and the natural products industry, many of us know the things that we need to do at a more foundational level, but our lives take over sometimes. And that definitely happened to me. And so, kicking the pants for my wife to go out and see a doctor, and, kind of like a silly guy, I was like, well, I don't really want to see a doctor, but I know I've got stuff I need to fix. So as an entrepreneur, if I can figure out how to fix it for myself, maybe I can help others fix it for themselves. And that led me on my own wellness journey. And I met with some amazing people. One of the fathers of the Human Genome Project, Dr. Leroy Hood, got my genome sequenced from him. Met some scientists in the Netherlands from a firm called TNO. You may have seen them in the food news because they did the 3D printing of food. Mm-hmm. That could be sprouted and edible food that's printed. These guys are amazing, and they've been working on personalized nutrition for the last 10 years in the Netherlands, doing some great studies in Europe. And I got some tests done with a bunch of other folks, and I brought all this stuff together. And the story that it told was pretty interesting. It told me that, look, not only was I a middle-aged white guy, which was a shock to me, but that I was pre-diabetic, high risk for a heart attack, caffeine sensitive genetically, which means that the 3 cups of coffee I was drinking every day were, accelerating the risk of some of these other things that I had going on. And I stopped and I actually, sat down with a functional medicine specialist. They said, hey, you can solve this by taking medication, or you can solve it with diet and lifestyle. And I said, let's do the latter. And I started crafting a plan with them. And after 3 months of changing the way I eat, I started feeling amazing. After 6 months, I'd lost 25 pounds. All of this was based on my biology, and all of my numbers started coming in line, right? And it was incredible. It was like a wake-up call for me. And that experience that I had is the foundation of Habit. So Habit is the world's first personalized nutrition company from test to table. And our goal with that is really to unlock the best version of each person around this country through the power of food. And so when we talk about test to table, there's really like 3 companies in one overarching umbrella. The first is a testing company. So we do DNA, blood work, and we have this unique way of testing your metabolism. We take all of that combined with your goals around your health and wellness goals and food goals, and we craft a personalized nutrition recommendation for you. And then to hit the easy button, we have fresh prepared meals customized to your biology delivered to your door. So it really brings, the empowerment with knowledge with the ease and convenience of health all together under one umbrella.
Fascinating. And so you just launched really in the last, what, 4 or 5 months or
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, we announced the company about 4 months ago, and we actually just launched January 3rd at the Consumer Electronics Show, where we
And what have
announced a
you
big
learned so
partnership.
far? What have you learned in the first month?
Well, this idea is really resonating with people. One of the things we say is that instead of pulling out, and this is the new year, when you're in January, February, this is when everyone's making New Year's resolutions. And what's really interesting about this moment in time is that 37% of people say in their New Year's resolutions they want to eat better. 31% want to lose weight, right? And so the challenge is that after 1 month, almost a third of people drop off, and then take that all the way to 1 year, and only 8% carry through with the goals they have around eating better and losing some weight. And so we think that a lot of the one size fits all fad diets that are out there today are actually more counterproductive than they are helpful. And so we think a personalized based approach that looks inside of you for the answers around what kinds of foods you need to be your optimal self is a more sustainable way of actually approaching both, energy, vitality, and weight management.
And are your customers going to let you track their outcomes kind of collectively so that you can aggregate the results of your and effectiveness of your
Well,
program?
so we with each individual, the individual's profile is private and secure and dedicated to them. So they have a dashboard that they can track all of their results over time. The other component we have is a community-based approach where people that have similar biology, so say, Will, you and I shared the same biology, we would be put into what's called a habit type. And that habit type is a way of eating. So in my case, it's a protein seeker, which is a low carb, moderate fat, high protein diet. And so we would be able to share, tips and tricks around ways of eating and, what restaurants have the best food for a protein seeker and this kind of thing. But what we're focused on is delivering an exceptional consumer experience, not dealing with data on the back end.
And as you're building this company, what kinds of new skills or competencies or team members do you need in a personalized nutrition
Yeah,
company that you didn't have in a, healthy kids and baby food company?
yeah. Well, this is a tough one. All right. So, like I talked about, three different companies under one roof. We have scientists, we have technologists or engineers, software engineers, the guys and gals in the hoodies, and we have foodies, right? So we have really three distinct cultures that have very distinct ways of working,
Mm,
and all of them are vitally important that they work together. And so one of the things that's both really exciting and also somewhat challenging is like, how do you take this central idea and bring the scientists, the technologists, and the foodies all together in a development process that cuts across digital product down to a fresh prepared meal that's dropped off at your door. So it's challenging for sure. But what we think is so exciting about it is we've cracked the code on how to bring these three distinct cultures together, and we've created, I think, an exceptional experience from all the way, like I said, from that test all the way to the table. So we're excited to share it with you for sure.
I would imagine. Oh, I can't wait to try it. I imagine that anything this sophisticated would require kind of premium positioning and pricing at the beginning, at least. How do you think about bringing the benefits of personalized health? You may have been 50 pounds overweight, but you, are not alone in the
Yeah.
challenges
Yeah.
of that our country and the rest of the world has. I guess one of the questions that came in earlier is sort of how do you think about access to
Yeah.
products like this, and
Yeah.
particularly in a time in our country where we have such massive inequality and stratification of those that have access to health
Yep.
and those that maybe don't.
Yeah. Well, I'll take you back to a Plum story to kind of talk about the future of habit in that regard. So when we first started with the spouted pouch baby food, it was literally at least 4 times more expensive than any other product that was on the market at that point.
4 times.
And yeah, 3 to 4 times depending on the
Yeah.
the tier pricing. But we started with a mission, like I said, very best food to little ones at the very first bite. So that very best food was a really important thing, right? Which is we're not going to skimp on the quality of the food that we're going to do here. We're going to deliver that. Okay. Now we all know, and anyone on this, on this live feed knows that real food costs more than what I'd characterize as highly processed or fake food. And so we said, look, we know that these price points are going to be unattainable to some and perhaps even many right out of the gate. But as we all know, economies of scale and bringing demand for organic, creating a market for amaranth, right, which is an ancient grain. I was told by one of the people in my supply chain last year that we were the largest global sourcer of organic amaranth in the world. This blew my mind. And we've created that because we have amaranth in a number of our different pouch products. So we were able to build scale, and with scale came efficiencies. With scale came price reductions. Now, as I said, we are at a very, I would say, a very accessible price point, sold in 75% of retailers around the country. And so, and that's after short 8 to 9 years. Okay. So the big takeaway for me, as it relates to habit, is right now the testing, is expensive. All right. The fresh prepared meals are, they're on parity or on price comparison with every other meal delivery service out there, but they're personalized to you. But still, you could argue, in some markets, those are a little bit out of reach for folks. I think the same model applies here. Is as we get more people onto the platform, the cost of testing comes down. We transfer that into a more cost-effective test. Same thing with the food. As we scale it, we're able to keep the quality and integrity of the food, but we can drop some of the price down. And that's where we start to unlock the true potential of habit across the entire United States. And the last thing I would say is that, while we're innovating, we've launched our Cadillac product, or probably a Mercedes product because it's a little more designed than a Cadillac. But, we continue to innovate to create accessibility as part of our innovation outcomes. So I think you'll see more stuff from us that I think cracks the code on this.
I love that the Cadillac name and brand still transcends the product.
I know.
It's like
I know.
Xerox, Kleenex. I mean, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and well, after I said it, I'm like, I actually wouldn't put them in that top tier, but anyway, I was like, that's fine.
It's a big figment of speech, right? Yeah. So, Neil, just in the last few minutes, there's a lot of questions about the company and how it works and its products. And at the end, I'd like you just to direct people like where they should go to find out all of the details about the business, because there are places that people can find out those answers. What does it cost, and how do I get it, and who's it for, and how does it work, all those things. But today, I think be interesting to hear from you, your vision of where do you think this whole realm of personalized nutrition is going to go, nutrigenomics and metabolomics and the microbiome testing that's becoming just almost affordable and available now. Where do you see this going? And given your crystal ball of seeing another category sort of take form and scale, what's the future hold for us in personalized nutrition?
Yeah, I just recently gave a talk at the World's Fair Nano around the future of food, and I started by looking at the history of food, and it was fascinating. And I'll have to share this with you and your audience sometime soon. But I went through starting at 0 BC when Eve made the wrong food choice at that earliest moment, all the way to the breakneck swing of high carb to low carb to high fat to low fat, and what's fascinating is this happens in and out of centuries, these kind of oscillations, right? Along with some other crazy approaches that would not be recommended for anyone. But one of the things, when you look at that, one thing that is consistent, even though there's a lot of oscillation and there's a lot of commonality in some of these things, is that we always took a one-size-fits-all approach to food. Always took a one-size-fits-all approach to food. And now, at this day and age, we know more about ourselves than we ever have in the history of mankind. We know how to manage big data in a way that we can pull out unique insights about what's going on inside of our bodies that make us truly unique and different, combined with technology and innovation and entrepreneurialism that allows it to take all of that really interesting data and translate it into something you can actually take action in your life every day. So we think what's happened is in 2017 is the era of you. And this is where food moves from one size fits all to a highly personalized approach. Now, when you take that and ripple it out, more sensors are coming along every day. We have, I'm a big Fitbit fan, and we have a Fitbit integration into Habit, great partnership with them. And so now all of my activities actually on a daily basis modify my food recommendation, right? So you can start to imagine new sensors come online, new tracking that happens just in our world. All of this is going to start to come a data cloud around you that starts to inform what are the unique foods you need at the very moment that you're participating in these things. And I think the unlock on that is going to be accelerated human performance, both mental and physical. I think it's going to be new levels of optimized well-being. I think it's going to be new understandings around our own self and our own getting back to that intuition of what kinds of foods are right for us. And what I'd love to see, quite frankly, is an ability to look at every food label and be able to interpret it around what I need, not a generic standard that exists in the world. So,
It's a very
anyway, I think it's
a
very
very
exciting.
powerful vision. It's very exciting. I hope that with your wonderful ingenuity, Neil, and the influence that you now have in the world of food, that you can also manifest this era of you to be an
Yep.
era for us as
Yeah,
well.
awesome. I love
So
it.
more important
Going
than
for
ever.
it.
Yeah. So tell everybody just in the last minute here where they can find out more about Habit and get the details on the product and the pricing and everything.
Yeah, first off, everyone who's listening to this, thanks for watching. Really great to have your attention for almost an hour. And Will, thank you for having me. I mean, again, I always enjoy our conversations. So look forward to the next time we can sync up.
Yeah.
So for anyone who's interested to know more about Habit, go to habit.com. That's our website. There's a lot of information. You'll have our story there. You'll have how it works, the science behind Habit. And then if you actually want to know more, reach out to us, support@habit.com. And we can answer any questions you have. But, encourage you all to kind of jump on the platform, try it out, and kind of enter into this new year with the best version of yourself.
Thanks so much. This has been great. It's great timing, a great way for us to start the year together. And I wish you all the best. And I do look forward to our next conversation. Take
Cool.
care.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Will. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye. I'll just wrap up. Now we actually have another FoodBiz Plus tomorrow with Steve Case, which is going to be very exciting. And you can get the details on our website and here on the screen. And then following up on that is at the end of March, we're going to be speaking with Cheryl O'Loughlin, who was Neil's co-founder at Plum, and is now the CEO of a company called Rebel Foods. Very exciting. Again, another serial entrepreneur. And Cheryl's the author of a new book that is really exciting and very, very personal called Killing It, and really about kind of the challenges of being an entrepreneur in today's day and age and all the things she's learned. So two authors coming up here in tomorrow in February and then in later March, and we'll have several other people scheduled for you for our monthly get-togethers. So once again, thanks again for joining us at FoodBiz Plus here at the Food Business School of the Culinary Institute of America. Have a great day. Bye-bye.